Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Q&A. You ask questions, I will answer to the best of my ability. Ask in the comments or using the links in the description to contact me, and keep it about WoW so that we can learn stuff. So today's question was sent in by Connor, who emailed me and said, "Hey Tuskeh, I wanted to write this email in regards to a question I had about being aware in raids. I've been playing World of Warcraft for 10 years and have always been a fairly highly achieved heroic raider. Now I'm onto Mythic. I do everything possible to further better myself in the game, reading up on my class, researching heavily, cleaning up my UI to perfection, discovering new tools to help me with raiding, talking to more experienced players, etc. Despite all these things that I do to frequently ensure that I am performing at my best level, there is still one major thing that is hindering me from doing well: raid awareness. A good practice I have is to keep my UI clean so that I have minimal distractions while in an encounter, so this really isn't the problem. With such a clean screen, it should be easier for me to avoid mechanics. But no, I'm still finding myself consistently dying to stupid things after 5 years of raiding. Raid awareness comes with practice, but at this rate, I don't know how much more practice I need. There has to be a way for me to further improve my awareness because I am tired of letting my raid members down. There are some things I do well to be raid aware, such as making my debuffs larger, importing weak auras for specific boss fights, utilizing DBM voice packs and audible weak aura alerts, keeping my raid frames right below the fight, as well as my cast bar and other things. So I'm not sure what else to do. If you have any suggestions, please help me with my situation. Okay, so a couple of things before we get into the nitty-gritty of this particular question. First of all, raid awareness is something that everyone has to be constantly working on, and if you just say to yourself, I don't need to be raid aware anymore, even if you do that subconsciously and you're just focusing on, say, your DPS, it can be very easy to make a mistake, because raid awareness is very much the foundation of your skill when it comes to raiding. Not standing in fire is really the baseline of skill, not the be-all, end-all. So if there is something wrong with that structure, with that baseline of skill, and you make a basic mistake, you do need to go back and have a look at it. Because I've made the mistake, and I'm sure a lot of people have, and this is my second point: don't worry about occasionally making mistakes. If you occasionally die to things, it's not the end of the world, you know, because we're all human beings. At some point or another, we're going to forget something, and we're going to be like, okay, I need to focus, because this happened to me, actually, and I'll put it up on screen now. I was doing the Iron Maidens, and I was like concentrating on trying to out-DPS another shaman, and I was like, alright, let's get this Earthquake down, get all my rotation to it as optimally as I can, and I killed like 4 people because I didn't move a blood ritual to the side, you know, just a very basic thing. I apologized and said, you know, I'm sorry, I got distracted, won't happen again. And, you know, it doesn't happen again. But, you know, those kind of little silly mistakes occasionally happen. It's not the end of the world if it does happen. But don't let this fact stop you from being dedicated towards getting better. And yeah, raid awareness really is the key, in my opinion, 101, the very basic stuff. You need to get it perfect. You need to make sure you have that raid awareness down. So let's go through a few things and try and teach everyone who's watching about raid awareness and also situational awareness, because these two things are very important. So these two skills are normally developed naturally, you know, with practice. As you get into the repetition of raiding, you do bosses over and over again, you learn. And you just think to yourself, okay, I just know this fight now, I know what happens at what point, and I can just kind of dance around it without really thinking about it. And that's great, that's where you can really get into the doing really well. But, you know, first of all, you have to get to that point. So let's go over what these two things are. So situational awareness is an awareness of what's going on around you, alright? For instance, there's fire on the floor, alright? Situational awareness will tell you, there's fire on the floor, I don't want to stand in it, right? That's very basic stuff. But situational awareness also encompasses what's going to happen. It extends to thinking ahead. So for instance, there's fire on the floor, there's also going to be fire on the floor soon. Where do I need to be to avoid that fire right now? The fire's going to be here, I'm too close, I move away, fire comes in, you're safe. That's the very basic concept of situational awareness. It's awareness of what's going on in any given situation and how that situation will develop. This is built from a knowledge of the fight, primarily. And a very basic knowledge of the fight will tell you, okay, there's going to be stuff here, and this is going to happen at this particular point. For instance, take Beast Lord Darmak. If you use a raid add-on like DBM or Bigwigs, which you should because you're raiding, you can use situational awareness to tell yourself, okay, I glance up at the timer, I see in 5 seconds, spears are going to be thrown out. Situational awareness tells me, that there may very well be one or even two underneath my feet. So I'm going to need to be prepared to start moving. And it will also tell you things like, okay, in this particular phase, I'm going to need to be in this particular position. And sometimes that can take a bit of time to develop, especially when you're getting onto, say, a mythic version of a fight, because that situational awareness changes. The kind of things you have to do change. So it can be a little bit difficult. So that's what situational awareness is. Moving on to raid awareness. Now, I just want to quickly point out that these definitions are my own, and they're just what I think that these kind of things are. So, in my opinion, situational awareness is all the stuff about, dealing with the fight. Raid awareness is an understanding and awareness of your raid team and how your team specifically affects a fight. So, for instance, raid awareness could be knowing that a healer is using a cooldown for a particular part of a fight. So you would know, okay, this big burst of damage is coming in, but at this point in the fight, healer A uses this cooldown, which means that I don't have to use one of my own to help survive. And you also know that, okay, at this part of the fight, all the healers are out of cooldowns, this is where I should use my own. Things like that. This also extends to things like knowing where the tank will be moving a boss at this particular moment. So you'll think, okay, right now the boss is going to be moving in this direction. And that's not the fight doing that, that's your raid doing that. And communicating with your raid team and knowing what's going on will contribute to this raid awareness. One good example of raid awareness is as a ranged DPSer on Black Hand during the second phase after he's gone through the floor. You know, because you communicate with your team and you know how they handle the fight, where the Siege Maker is going to be kited and where it's going, because the person who's kiting it, normally a hunter, will communicate with you, this is where I am taking the Siege Maker. And that raid awareness will tell you, okay, I know where that Siege Maker is going, so I need to know not to be there. So by combining raid awareness and situational awareness, this is what lets you dance through a fight, because you've got what the fight does and what your raid team does to affect the fight. Combine those two and a good knowledge of them, and you should be good. So this is not so much for the person who wrote this email, but more for people in general, because I kind of glossed over it in the email, but there are several things you can do in terms of information to help with situational and raid awareness. So make information easy to see. That's really, really important. So there are a few things that you can track using your user interface that will help you see things, right? That will help you understand what's going on around you. Because what's going on around you is more than just, oh, there's a boss here, there's some fire here, and it's not just what you see in the game world. It's also what's going on in terms of buffs, debuffs, cast bars, things like that. Alright, so, first of all, buffs. Use weak auras, okay? It is the best add-on ever. If you're tracking buffs and you're looking up at the top right of your screen and you're not looking around the center of your screen, this is a waste of time, because your eyes need to be on the center of your screen. You need to see what's going on around you at all times. So make weak auras and put them around the center of your screen, just like you see in my user interface. I've got a guide for doing so. I'll include a link in the description if you want to see that. But yeah, weak auras, it's a great add-on. So when it comes to buffs, make sure that you use something like weak auras to tell you what's going on with your character. Alright, now for debuffs. So, either you can make a custom weak aura for boss debuffs, which I don't personally do, or you can use, for instance, a boss mod add-on like DBM to tell you what's going on with the boss, give you things like timers, let you know when you've got certain debuffs on you, things like that. If you're using DBM, then actually I'd suggest you going to Bigwigs, because this is my personal preference, and if you prefer DBM, that's fine. And the reason I'm suggesting it is because I know Bigwigs better, and it has a few settings that you can actually use to emphasize certain abilities. I'm not sure if DBM does this, but if it does, great. If you need to emphasize certain abilities, make sure you take the time to have a look at that and see, okay, for this fight I'm struggling with, let's say, the impaling throw on Black Hand. I need to know when it's on me, so emphasize it. More so than this, keep your eyes near the center of your screen so that you can actually see what's going on around you, because there's normally a physical indication of a debuff. For instance, Black Hand's impaling throw. I'll show you it on screen now, but this is a great tip for debuffs. Layer notifications of debuffs so you have several. So when I get an impaling throw from Black Hand, several things happen. So take a look at this Black Hand footage right here. When I get marked for death, several things happen. First of all, Bigwigs makes a noise. My screen flashes blue. I see marked for death in the upper half of my screen, and it shows who's been marked for death. One of them is me. My character says mark on Conto Canis. I see the debuff in the center of the screen, and additionally, I get a debuff in the top right. That's the only one that I don't really use. But those several layers of communication from the game to me. You know, for instance, the pinging noise, the blue screen, all that stuff. It's all telling me the same thing. You have the mark. You need to know this. So make sure you layer several notifications like that onto your user interface so that you know. Just don't go over the top. Just have a few things that tell you, right, stuff's going down, right? So that's a good way of making sure that you know what's going on around you. So that's a good way to handle debuffs. Next up, your raid frames. First of all, keep them in a location where you can see them, even if you're a DPSer, so you know what's going on with your raid. And make them present useful information to you, not just the health bars, but, you know, my Voodoo, for instance, is set up so that it displays important debuffs. Make sure you know when someone has a dispellable debuff, what kind of debuff it is. Poison, disease, curse, magic, things like that. And even what the debuff is. This is actually a key flaw with my UI, but I don't actually see the debuff when a debuff actually comes in and it kind of lights up the particular raid frame. I just use my knowledge of the fight to figure out what it is. Although in some cases that might actually be detrimental, so make sure you know what the debuff is. So yeah, raid frame's pretty important as well. Next up, keep an eye on your enemies' buffs and debuffs. This will give you another means with which to track what they are doing. So my UI has, with shadowed unit frames, enemy buffs near the center of my screen, so that I can look at them whenever I need to, and at a glance, see how many stacks of a buff they have, how long a buff might last, things like that. It will help you. So that's just another way of tracking information. Finally, cast bars are super important. Pretty much everything has a cast bar these days. So use it. Put a cast bar in the center of your damn screen. I mean, that's where I have mine. I have mine in the center of my screen. Like, I don't care. I'm used to it now. I want to know what my enemies are casting, because that is the ultimate means with which to figure out what they're doing. I use Quartz. I have it set up in the center of my screen. Nice and simple. That's just it. I mean, just know what they're doing, and that's great. Alright, so those are a few things regarding information. Now for actually talking about how you can practice and get better with situational and raid awareness outside of just presenting information, because you have to be able to use that information. So I can't really say to you, okay, this is what you need to do in order to know what to do on this fight, or this fight, or this fight, because any boss guide will tell you what to look out for. But really, a boss guide or something like that won't tell you all of the little things that you need to figure out, right? All of the little things that go on during a fight before the big thing happens. So, things like, you know, Gruul's cleave, you know, his big Inferno slash. No guide can cater itself to your raid team and how they handle things, because everyone's going to handle things fairly differently. They might even do the same tactic in a different kind of way, just because everyone's different. So you need to be able to think on the fly like that. You need to be able to say to yourself, okay, this is how my mechanics mesh with my raids. So for instance, to talk directly to the person who sent me this email, as a restoration shaman, you have several mechanics that interact with your raid team. You have your ascendants, you have your 2 spirit link tomes if you're running with Echo of the Elements. You have your astral shift, which I assume you're using. I mean, I prefer astral shift. If you don't, then you have your either Nature's Guardian or Stone Bulwark totem. You have your Healing Tide totem. And you have, obviously, all your healing spells as well. So those are just a few examples, but think about how those particular mechanics affect your raid team and affect you. Make sure that every time you cast one of those spells, it's beneficial, you know? So, other than that, there are, of course, a few things, very simple things you can do that might help you. So, research the fights. It sounds like you're a Mythic Raider, so it honestly probably isn't an issue of researching the fights, but just double-check mechanics, make sure you haven't missed anything. Next up, always think ahead. Think about what's going to be happening, not just what's happening now, which again is fairly simple. Remember that your damage or healing is not as important as you think it is. That goes for everyone, okay? I mean, if you die, it's bad, okay? The only reason you should die in World of Warcraft is because you have decided you want to die, okay? The only example I can give is on Blackhand, where you think to yourself, okay, I have an impaling throw. The only way that I can stop this from hitting most of the raid is to jump off the side. If that's the case, you jump off the side. That's the only case I can think of where dying will be beneficial. If you're wiping on Chromog, maybe you can jump down. But anyway, my point is that your goal as a raider is to kill the boss and to have fun, of course. And we can talk about fun in a different video. But your goal is to kill the boss, right? And you contribute towards killing the boss by either tanking, healing, or dealing damage. And regardless of what that case is, as long as the boss dies, you're fine, okay? Worry about your damage or your healing after the fight is over. Don't spend time glancing down at DPS meters. It will not help you. Hide your DPS meters or your healing meters if you find yourself looking at them frequently while you're doing a fight, because that's not helping at all. If you're looking at DPS or a healing meter rather than the fight, not only are you going to get worse on that DPS or healing meter, but, you know, you're making the raid weaker. So that's one other thing you can do. But really, when it comes to you in particular, Mr. Connor, and this is a situation that a lot of people might find themselves in, especially if they've been raiding for a while. They find themselves just dying to stuff, and it seems like it's been that way all the time. The best thing you can do is, and this might actually sound a bit strange, the best thing you can do is to find a way to record yourself. Record yourself playing. So, for instance, if you're doing a fight, just press record with a free version of Fraps or something. There are lots of different ways out there. Just like use a Bandicam or something, just something simple like that, to record yourself and go back and see what you did wrong. And that's really what the process needs to be. I mean, you don't have to record yourself, but it helps. So if you find yourself dying on a fight, ask yourself a few questions. Don't just immediately throw up your hands in the air and go, oh, I died, this is the worst thing in the world, everything's terrible. Right? Think to yourself and learn from it. Think, okay, what killed me? What did I do that made that thing capable of killing me? How can I change my behavior in the future so that it doesn't kill me? Okay, so let's say you're doing Orgorger. You get hit by Orgorger and you die. All right, shame, but not the end of the world. So think about what killed you. Well, Orgorger rolling over you killed you. Okay, so what did the fight do that enabled that to happen? What did you do to enable that to happen? Well, you were standing in the way of Orgorger. What can you do? Not stand in his way. But that's a bit primitive, isn't it? That's a bit simple. That's like saying, oh, this really complex mechanic killed me. The way to sort it out is to not let it kill me. That doesn't make any sense. You need to figure out how to do that. So, for instance, for Orgorger, you have to think, well, I died because he came seemingly out of nowhere, out the side of my screen, and just, I didn't have a chance to react. All right? Which suggests you need to keep a closer eye on where he is. And if at some point he randomly turned and charged you, even though you knew where he was, it suggests that you don't entirely understand how he works in terms of mechanics. Because remember, when Orgorger stops, he smashes into a wall, he will turn in one of the different directions. He'll never go from where he just came from, but he will pick a direction and then roll. So make sure you, again, double check on the fights and the mechanics, make sure you're not missing anything. And every time you die, learn from it. That is the most important thing, I think, is constantly try and learn. If something kills you, ask yourself, and don't just think to it in your head, write it down on a notepad or using the notepad in your computer, things like that. And just make a list of, you know, what killed me. So, yes, that's all I really have to say about situational awareness. It's all about learning. It's all about thinking ahead. It's all about thinking to yourself, okay, I died. What killed me? How do I avoid dying again? Practice makes perfect here. Regardless of how much you've been practicing, regardless of how much work you do, make sure you always think to yourself, how can I improve? How can I get better? Always try and get better. If you try and get better, generally, you will. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and you found it helpful. Thank you very much for your email, Connor. And if anyone has any questions for more of these Q&As, you can contact me using the links in the description, or you can just leave a comment. Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in the world of Warcraft.